What's up, guys? This is Brave, and I'm back with another review of Tyler Perry's Sistas. This is season 2, episode 9. The episode is titled When I Get Home, and we definitely had a lot of situations where someone was waiting for someone else until they got back. So let's go ahead and get started on this episode. I'm going to break this down character by character instead of scene by scene. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with my girl Fatima. As we all know, I absolutely love Fatima's character. And when we saw her this episode, she ended up giving Zach a call, just to let him know that she basically left the door key for him because, of course, she wants him to, come back to her place. Now, Zach was acting super duper weird when he was on the phone with her. And I'm like, I can already sense that there is something happening that is going to be discussed further in this episode. And when I tell you Zach showed his entire ass, he really did. But we'll get into that in a second. So we later see Fatima. She's getting ready because, she's supposed to be going out with Andy. Because they're supposed to get all the girls together so that she can tell them that she got her job back or whatever. And there's a knock at her door. And who is it? Hayden, randomly. And Fatima is like me. You didn't call first. Like, why are you just popping up at my doorstep? So he's like, oh, I'm just here to talk about Andy. And she's like, okay, well, what about her? And he tells her, that Gary was all loud and doing whatever in the parking lot. And he goes on to ask her, like, how well do you know Andy? And she's like, I'm getting to know her or whatever. And he's like, oh, would you know if she was in trouble? And she's like, I'll just try to talk to her. And then she's like, is that it? And he's like, goes on to like compliment her or whatever. But it's like, dude, you showed up to this woman's house unannounced to talk about Andy, which the information was something that you could have texted Fatima. And then you get there and you're basically trying to like get with Fatima. Like, I thought Hayden was a good dude, but this episode proved to me that all the guys on this show are pretty much trash. Anyways, so he tries to like give her like a compliment, and she's like ready to shut him down because she wants him to leave her house. And she's like, we hooked up once, that's it, we remained friends, there's no need for you to try to catch feelings. And he's like, well, I think that you're the one. And she's like, well, I'm pretty sure a lot of guys feel that way about me. And I'm like, the confidence that Fatima has, I feel like I need some of that. So, she's just basically saying that she's not interested. And then he brings up how all the women that he knows that are her age want to get married. And of course, Fatima's like, I'm not one of those women. And I really need for men to realize that every woman does not want this stupid fairy tale that we were told when we were little girls. Like, we don't need a man to save us. We don't need to be married. If she wants to be single for the rest of her life, she can do that and live her life freely on her terms at her own will. You know what I'm saying? So after this, he randomly said like, oh, I get it, your dad must have did something to your mom. I'm sorry, I don't know what in the Iyanla Fix My Life he thought he was about to do, or some type of reverse psychology that Hayden thought that he was about to do. But like, Fatima was fed up, was like, no, it's time for you to go. Because at that point, it's like, Hayden, you are literally here. You were trying to compliment her. She's like, yeah, I know I'm cute, whatever. It's still time for you to leave her house. And then you go on talking about how she's the one. Dude, you guys were friends. Well, for what it sounds like they were friends. They hooked up one time, and that was it. Like, dude, you're talking to her like as if you guys were dating, or if you guys were in some type of relationship. Like, I will say this, just ahead of this entire review, that within Tyler Perry's writing, he has a lot of the character saying things that you would say with someone who you've been in a relationship with. and not someone you're just dating or talking to. Because I feel like how hard Hayden was going about how, like, she's the one and she's this, that, another. I'm like, dude, you are talking to her like as if y'all were together before. And you haven't. You only just, like, were friends with her. You guys, are co-workers. And y'all slept together once. I need you to calm all the way down. So after she tells him, that he needs to leave, he's like, oh, well, you must have some other guy coming over or whatever. And she's like, yeah, I do. And you want to meet him? And he's like, yeah. So she's like, well, you can meet him on the other side of that door. And I'm like, absolutely, Fatima, because at this point, Hayden just needs to go. Like, I am so surprised that this is how his character has turned out. But whatever. This is how he was written, and I feel like there's going to be a lot more drama happening with him in the episodes to come. Also, one more thing about that scene that really, like, pissed me off was when he was like, she's going to look back and realize that she missed out on some good opportunities. I'm sorry, I ain't never heard of no man refer to himself as a damn opportunity. Like, he said that like as if she passed up on a job. Like, you're really going to miss out on some good opportunities. Dude, get over yourself. So when we finally see Fatima again, she, getting ready to leave, and Zach ends up showing up to her place. First of all, his shirt was all open. I don't know what was happening with all of that. I'm like, Zach, button your shirt up. Like, this just it just wasn't fitting the scene at all. I don't know whose idea that was. But anyway, he comes in, he's acting all weird. He starts questioning her about having other men and saying, he can leave because she's going out. And she's like, no, just go ahead and stay until I come back. Well, here's actually the thing that threw me off was I'm kind of over. I think there were so many ladies who told guys to stay at their place while they left in this episode, and we're going to further discuss that. But also, like, Zach, this woman offered you a place to stay, even minus y'all hooking up with each other. She offered you a place to stay because you had nowhere else to go. Like, I don't understand why you're coming at her sideways, considering y'all have only known each other for, what has it been, like a day and a half, I believe? This has to be like a day and a half, right? Maybe 2 days? But we're going to keep going. So, after that, she tells him that, she's an open book, and if there's anything that he needed to ask her, just go ahead and ask, because he was, like, giving her all types of attitude. So, he's like, oh, how many of the other dudes in the program is she doing this for? And she's like, I haven't been with anybody who's in the group. Which, I mean, honestly, a woman like Fatima, I don't see her just chasing after, like, dudes who just got out of jail who need to get on their feet. Like, I just don't see it for her doing that. I really feel like Zach is the exception. And then he randomly asked her, what about Hayden? Now, y'all, I feel like we have all watched the show. When did Zach have any interaction with Hayden? Because on the next episode, they're supposed to have some type of interaction with each other. How does he know who Hayden is? Who did he talk to that informed him anything about a Hayden? Especially considering she said that she only hooked up with him one time and they've been friends this whole time, because this program is separate from her actual job. You know what I'm saying? Like, this has nothing to do with her job at the law office where she would see Hayden. How does he know who Hayden is? Somebody please put that in the comments. Tell me how does he know? Because that question completely threw me off, and I'm like, how did we get here? Like, where did this come from? So, like I said, she ends up letting him know that, she did sleep with him once. She didn't like it. And she told him, I'm basically letting you know this because I feel like it. But at the end of the day, this is none of your business. And she's absolutely right. we're not dating, we're not together, I don't owe you any of this information. So I am completely understanding what Fatima is saying. So she also says that she's a grown-ass woman. She has her own back and she's in control. And that Zach needs to figure out what he wants. And if he's into playing games, then she's not the one. And she says that she's about to go, and he's like, oh, you about to go be with another guy? And she's like, yeah, if I want to. Like, it was just, so she like leaves or whatever, and Zach is still in her place. And for me, I just feel like, why is Zach and Fatima having these issues? Like, honestly, we have seen nothing but Fatima and Zach spend, like, you know, some good moments. And I get it, every couple is going to have some friction, but like, this was not the friction that I feel like Fatima and Zach needed to have right now. Like, him tripping on her, they just met, like, I'm sorry, these things just did not make any sense to me. Like, I don't feel like she should have had that dumb argument with Hayden, and I definitely don't feel like she needed to have this stupid argument or conversation with Zach, because at the end of the day, Zach, this woman is helping you get on your feet. You don't have any right questioning her. Y'all have only known each other for 2 to 3 days. What are you doing? Like, what is happening in these scenes? But you know what? We're going to keep rolling with it. We'll see what happens in the next episode. Alright, so next, let's go ahead and talk about Danny. So, we do see Sabrina and Danny. They have a conversation. I'm going to talk about that later when I talk about Sabrina. We see Preston. He is waiting for Danny outside of her apartment so they could talk. They go inside. You know, he starts with his apology. He tells her that his sister is the one who had to, you know, explain to him why him saying gal would be, you know, offensive. And Danny is really trying to stand her ground of he should know better, and he should know what would offend a black woman. And like he said, I've called girls that I've dated before gal, and they had no issue, so I did not realize that that would be the wrong term to use with you, which further let me know this is the first black woman he has dated. Therefore, Danny, he doesn't know any better. Like, I get that she's on this whole I shouldn't have to teach him and all that jazz, but like, girl, you are dating a white boy, and like, you found a real white boy who I feel like ain't been around black people probably ever until his adult life. Because there's a difference. There is a big difference when you have white people who have mingled with other cultures, and then there's the white people who only know white people. And y'all know what I'm talking about. So, she then says that, you know, she could have handled the situation different. She could have been more patient and more calm. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. But also at the same time, I kind of hate that, like, that situation, it boiled down to it was offensive that he called her gal. Like, no. The whole you being chained up, pot to piss in, and gal, that right there was a 3-piece combo. All 3 of those things are why you feel that way. Like, I wish we would have spoken more about that than just the term gal, but whatever. So he's like, okay, so now you can tell me about what happened with you. Which he's talking about James, the bartender. And of course she doesn't want to talk about that. But he asked her, you know, if she slept with him, and her response was that, well, we're not together. Now, me personally, I don't exactly like that response, because at the end of the day, if we really were to look at this situation, regardless of them not being together, they had an argument that morning. She had an attitude the rest of the day. Then she ended up meeting up with her girls that night. They went to the gay club. She met this guy and hooked up with him. girl, you did all this within less than 24 hours, and I feel like she didn't give them the time to really come back together, gather their thoughts, and have the discussion that they're having right now. I feel like she moved on an impulse and ended up hooking up with James. So, he asked her, is this something that she does on a regular, and like how many guys is she sleeping with? And she's like, however many guys that I feel like it. And I'm like, okay, I understand what she's saying. I understand all of the female sexual liberation and all that jazz. But at the same time, we all know, ladies, if the shoe was on the other foot and you walked in on him hooking up with another woman, you would feel some type of way, the same way that he's feeling some type of way. And you would probably want to be like, wait, so you're hooking up with all these other women as well? You would feel some type of way. I feel like his feelings are valid, regardless of them not officially dating. His feelings are definitely valid. And like Preston said, any man that really likes a woman, he wants to be the only one. So he then ended up saying that, he didn't like that, that she hooked up with this other guy. And she's like, well, we aren't together. Like, I really hate that she used that response multiple times within this conversation. I like the conversation that they had, but I just feel like she used that as an excuse, because I'm just thinking of like them in a relationship in the future. Anytime that he makes you mad, there's a chance that Danny is going to go out and not cheat, but because they're not together, remember, but there's a chance that she is going to go sleep with somebody else at any given moment. So let's just keep that in mind for the future, because we don't know how Tyler is going to be writing this. So he ends up telling her, that like he felt like that they were together, and for her to, open up and be truthful. So she's like, well, I was calling you, and you weren't, answering, which I don't understand how Preston keeps falling off the face of the earth, and then he just comes back like nothing happened. I'm like, dude, you know how cell phones work, right? Like, you could have just sent her a text that said, I need to clear my mind. I need to, do something. It's not cool for you to just disappear on this girl. So she ends up talking about how, she missed him, and that she just wanted someone to hold her and be with her. And of course, James, he didn't, exactly do that for her, because he was busy licking ass. But like, he was kind of taken aback, like, wait, I don't need to know all of that. And she's like, no, you're gonna know. So she ends up, telling Preston that she does really like him. And he was like, oh, I could just make us something to eat real quick or whatever. She's like, no, I'm going to go out with the girls. And he's like, oh, well, I can stay here and have dessert ready for when you come back. So, they get all close and flirty on the couch, and it looks like they're definitely about to get into something. But he did mention that he's not going to be licking any butt for her. I was like, okay, Preston, I understand. Now, this is the second guy who has been told to stay at a girl's house while she go out with her friends. Again, these people are not together, but we're going to go ahead and go to the next lady. So next we're going to talk about Sabrina real quick. Actually, there wasn't really a lot that happened with Sabrina. We saw that she called Danny, and, she was clearly drinking. She had a glass of wine in her hand. I have no idea how many she had before that. And then, they have small talk, and Danny, she asked Sabrina, like, why do you sound like that? And Sabrina asked Danny about James, and she told her that he likes to eat booty or whatever. And Danny tells her that the landlord, she kept letting Preston in, and he walked in, and, she had to go over the whole situation of what happened with her. So then Danny, she's like, Sabrina, just spit it out. And Sabrina tells her that Calvin wants to commit. And Danny says that they don't know each other like that. I'm like, clearly none of these couples know each other like that, because according to this timeline, like, I feel like I need to go back and watch the first episode of season 1 just so I can count how many days have actually passed, because I don't know how many has there actually been any months go by, you guys? Because I feel like this show is very like day by day, so how long I may think that things have gone by, we may still be on like week 1, and in my mind we like 2 months ahead. So Danny, she also brings up, the meth allegations, and Sabrina's like, we don't know if that's really true or whatever, but then this gives her an idea, and she like gets off the phone with Danny and she calls Maurice. Now, from last week, Maurice was staying behind so that he could, do his paperwork correctly or whatever, and then he said he was going to leave from work. Flash forward to this episode, Maurice is still at the bank. So she calls Maurice, and she suggested that he give Calvin a drug test. My issue with this is, like, Sabrina, just ask him. You are a grown woman. You need to go ahead and handle your business and stop getting all these other people involved, especially Maurice. Like, this is not a 3-way relationship. Stop involving Maurice. And he agrees to go along with it because I feel like Maurice knows how Sabrina is, but it's like, at this point, if you don't want to date someone who is allegedly on drugs, you need to go ahead and confront that person head on. Like, I don't understand how you're afraid to confront him about meth, but you was not afraid to share vibrators with him. Like, girl, get your priorities straight. So, we later see Maurice. He's still at the bank again, and he gets a call from Calvin, and Calvin is like, oh, I'm just calling about possibly moving in with you or whatever, and Maurice is like, well, they need to talk in person. He's like, oh, okay, cool. And Maurice tells him to bring him a burger. Whatever. Flash forward, we have Calvin bringing Maurice the burger, and Calvin, he starts talking about him moving in. So he said that he needs to hurry up and make a decision because his other dad will be moving to Florida and he's giving him all his savings. Y'all, red flag, flag on the play. Listen, I can't even remember what type of job that Calvin has, but there's no way you paid off your dad's medical bills from the hospital. You paid all of that off. You didn't get on a payment plan or nothing like that. Then your other dad is moving to Florida, and you're going to sit up here and tell us that you're about to give your dad all of your savings so that he can live comfortably? I'm sorry, what kind of dads did he have? These men didn't have no life insurance plans. Don't sound like they ever had any jobs. Like, dude, were they on, like, welfare? Like, I don't understand how broke his parents had to have been, considering, Calvin don't seem like, his dads didn't work or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that would have came up in conversation of him, having to live poor or something. Like, I'm trying to understand why all of Calvin's money is being spent by his dads. None of this makes sense, but we're just going to ride this one out, you guys. So Maurice is like, he can move in, but he got to pee in a cup first or whatever. Next thing y'all know, Calvin is on his knees peeing in a cup. I don't know why he was on his knees peeing in this cup, because I don't understand. Maybe someone can explain to me. Like, you can't even tell me, like, maybe because of the way it was shot. Nope. I know a few things about cameras. This did not have to be shot that way. I don't understand why he got on his knees. So, Calvin is like, oh, well, I'll be over tomorrow, to give you my deposit or whatever. And Maurice is like, well, no, we need to wait on the results. So Calvin is like, no, I'm gonna be there tomorrow with the money. And that pretty much wrapped up that scene. The last thing I want to talk about real quick while I'm still talking about Maurice, this episode actually ended with Maurice. He was finally leaving the bank, and the guy who beat him up was out there waiting for him. I find that to be very random, because like, how would you know that Maurice was there? Also, like, what time was this? Because how many hours did Maurice spend hanging out at the bank? Yeah, very, very strange. But we'll see what happens on the next episode. Let me go ahead and talk about Karen and Andy, and then we can go ahead and wrap this up, because I feel like this video is going to be quite long for some reason. I thought it was going to be a lot shorter, but let's go ahead and start it up with Andy, because Andy and Karen kind of tie into each other for a little bit. So, as we know, this episode actually started with Gary doing all that yelling in that parking lot of Andy's job. So, he's yelling at her to get in the car, and she's telling him to calm down. And then out of nowhere, he's like, where's my kiss and all this stuff. And then he's like, well, no, you probably don't want to give me a kiss or whatever because of that other guy. And of course, he's talking about Paris. And they're going back and forth. And he asks her if he asks her, do you want me to embarrass you out here? Y'all, he said that like as if he was her mama or something. Like, do you want me to embarrass you out here? Like, sir, if you don't cut it out. Gary is just a lot, and I really need for his character to bring it down a few notches. So, he continues to question her about Paris, and she asks him if he wanted to go back to jail, and I'm like, Andy, this is not really the time for you to be like, do you want to go back to jail? Like, Andy, we could have did a better line than that. Whatever. So he took her keys from her, and he talks about all the things that he had to give up. He's like, I had to give up my wife and my family and all this stuff. And I'm like, Gary, when did you give that up? Please, they act like we ain't see season 1. Gary was out here playing the fence about how he can't really leave his wife right now. Oh, my kids special needs, and they need to see me at home sometimes. Like, it was a whole thing. Then by the time he had finally decided to, give up that relationship with his wife, she was filing divorce papers. So what are we talking about here? Like, I just could not with Gary this episode. So, we next see Hayden. He showed up out of nowhere, asking, is everything all right? And Gary, he goes to yell at him like he'd been doing it to Andy, and Gary just kind of like walked off. I'm not Gary, Hayden walked off. So Andy, she gets her keys back and she drives off, and Hayden is backing up so that he can block Gary's car, so that he can't follow Andy. But y'all, why in this scene did she tell him, like, oh yeah, because I'm about to go to my apartment? Like, she said that like as if she moved to a new place and he didn't know where it was. Andy, he knows where you live. There's definitely a chance that Gary will show up to your house. But whatever. So, she ends up calling Karen and tells her that, Gary showed up to her job. Now, keep in mind, y'all, Karen was actually doing somebody's hair. She literally left doing that client's hair to go run behind Andy so that she can meet Andy at her apartment or whatever. And I'm like, Karen, you just let the girl who's like the hair washer just rest this girl out and you just gonna leave? It didn't look like it was nobody else in that shop that could do hair. But, this is how Karen handles business. So, Karen, she comes over to Andy's place, and they talk about Gary. So Andy, she's like, starting to make all the excuses for Gary. She's like, he was just angry and he's just a little upset. Like, girl, he's crazy. So Andy, she's like, I'm gonna give him his money back. And Karen's like, Andy, you don't need to give him that money. Like, you deserve the money. She's like, no, I'm gonna give it back. So then Karen comes actually up with to me a great plan. She's like, no, you're gonna give that money to me. He can meet me at the salon. I'll talk to him, and that's just, going to be that. Andy, she didn't want to do that. So Karen, she mentioned that, like, Jasmine said these things about him, and Andy's like, I can't trust her. But I'm like, girl, you can see what Gary is doing, what Gary is about. He's a terrible guy. So... And Karen, she even said, like, girl, you can see this with your own eyes. He's not the guy for you. So Andy's like, well, I still love him. And Karen needs to just give her a break. And Karen's like, well, I still love Zach. But I had to stop and look out for me. I said, you know what? That right there is a word. Because there have been plenty of times where women are stuck in relationships with men who just take to where this woman is basically down to bare bones after these men have taken so much from them. And then once the relationship is like really over, you have been completely drained. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do with myself now? And I'm pretty sure that, as listeners or viewers or whatever, to anyone watching this, you probably have seen women go through similar situations where you're just like, girl, how is she still with him? How has she not left him yet? And there's just this tie that they have to these men who are just not the best for them, but like, love is crazy like that. So, Andy, she goes on and talks about how, I'm sorry, not Andy. Karen, she goes on to say that, Gary is taking too much from Andy. And Andy says that she doesn't understand why it's so hard to love someone and for it to be reciprocated. But I'm like, first of all, sweetheart, you have to find your own man, and then maybe that love can be fully reciprocated. Because at the end of the day, Gary was married to someone else. He had an entire family with someone else. Like, sometimes I can understand, where Andy is coming from, because she loves him and all this stuff. But it's like, girl, you loved a married man. I don't know how far you thought this was going to go. Everybody is not Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats. Okay? Like, the guy does not always go be with the mistress, but whatever. So then Andy, she says that she just can't get over him, and Karen's like, well, you have to try, like, you have to start somewhere. And then Andy says that she's not as strong as Karen, and that she can't just drop him. She was planning a life with him. And it's like, yeah, you were planning a life with a married man. I don't see how you thought you were going to get far with that. But okay, Andy. So she's like, Karen, I just need you to give me a minute. But Karen tells her, your minute has lasted 6 months. And then Karen said she's not going to go through this with her. And Andy's like, I understand. I completely understand where Karen is coming from, because I hate being the friend who's like, I'm here for you, because we are supposed to be ride or die friends. But at the end of the day, I can't sit up here and keep hearing you talk about a man who we both know you need to leave. Because at the end of the day, baby, you're not about to stress me about some man that you still clinging on to. Even though as trash as he is, you still there. So I don't want to hear about this man. I don't want to see this man. If he drag you through the mud, girl, get comfortable. Because that is, at this point, that is what you're choosing. You're not choosing yourself. You're choosing to be dragged. Alright, so let's go ahead and wrap this up with Karen, because we only really had one other scene with Karen. Karen, she was rushing to get ready. She was at her apartment actually. And she was rushing to get ready because she was going to go to the grocery store with Aaron and then go out with the girls. So Aaron, he gets there and he's like, "Wait, why are you rushing?" And she's like, "Oh, I was planning on going with you and then hanging out with the girls." And he's like, "No, like we could just reschedule it." He just wanted to go back to where they met. And she's like, "Well, I wanted to see you." And I was like, I know those type of feelings when you just want to see the guy that you're interested in. It don't even matter if it's for like 5 minutes. Like, baby, I'm just trying to see your face. I'm just trying to feel your energy. You feel me? So, she then asked him if he knew who Rachel Hollister was, because she was the first lady who came to her salon. And he was like, "Nah, I don't know her." And she's like, "Oh, well, I thought that you would, because she's the first lady and she's never had a first lady of a church come into her salon." And I'm like, "Karen, you mean to tell me you've had this salon for I don't know how long and you ain't had no church ladies come up in there? Like, the church ladies is who you should be trying to get their business, because they forever want their hair fried, dyed, and laid to the side every Sunday." So I did not understand that, but okay, girl. So he's like, maybe God is trying to tell you something. And she's like, "Nah, don't start with that," or whatever. So he just basically suggested that they go to the store tomorrow. And she tells him, that would be great. But she would also like for him to have, been there when she comes back home. All right, y'all. This is guy number 3, I believe. Yes, this is guy number 3 who's been told to stay at another woman's apartment who they are not officially dating. I'm sorry. Maybe it's the way I've been raised. Maybe it's the relationships that I have been in. But I'm not letting any man stay in my house and we ain't together. Like, there is no reason that Zach needed to hang out at Fatima's. Well, technically he could, because he was supposed to be sleeping in her other bedroom. But like Preston waiting on Danny, this whole Aaron waiting on Karen, like, I'm sorry, Tyler, we gotta stop treating these talking phases or situationships of these people like they're dating, like as if they're in a relationship. Because I'm sorry, just for me, I'm not having no dude waiting up in my place. Like, especially when we ain't together. What he supposed to do? Just like sit at my house for a couple of hours until I get back? No, thank you. Like, these men could literally go home and he could come over when I'm back at my place. You're not about to be roaming through my apartment when I'm not there. Sorry. So, he's like, "Oh, okay." Aaron agrees that, he'll stay at her apartment. He's like, "I'm just going to go get a bag real quick and then I'm going to come back to your apartment and I'll be waiting here when you get here." And I'm like, yeah, that's cute, but still, I don't understand. So you're going to go get a bag, come back, her apartment is just going to be unlocked for you. I'm like, so nobody locked the doors around here. I'm just going to leave that where it's at. It's a TV show. So before he walks out though, he asks her, did she need any money to go out? And she's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, to go with your girls." "Do you need any money?" And she's like, "No, I'm good," or whatever. And like, I feel like she was definitely taken aback, because she was, she's been with Zach at his brokest for so long that like she didn't know what it was like to be with a man who offered her money. And I'm like, girl, he's a keeper. Go ahead and keep messing with Aaron, because as we know, Zach was not where it was at. Alright, you guys, so oh my gosh, this review is actually pretty long. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up here. Hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to see you guys' comments below. And just go ahead and let me know what you thought of this episode. Also, if you have any suggestions for any other shows I should review, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. And have a good day. Bye, guys.